Hey guys, this is Tzvi from IsraelBeyond.com. Today is Yom Ha'atzmaut 5775, but for those of you who follow the regular calendar, it's 2015. So for the past week, we've been celebrating or commemorating various holidays, various days in Israel. The first one was last week, which is called Yom HaShoah. It's actually Holocaust Remembrance Day. And so it starts with Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it culminates, and it goes for about a week, and it culminates goes into Yom HaZikaron, and then it culminates in Yom Ha'atzmaut. It's Remembrance Day for all the soldiers, Memorial Day, and then it culminates in Independence Day. So we go from extreme sadness to extreme joy, extreme simcha, extreme happiness. I think it's very symbolic for the Jewish people, for the nation of Israel, to do it in such a way. The only thing is, I have a little bit of a problem with the way that it's done, is that what happens is, and I work in the pro-Israel world, or I guess the Israel education world, where I use my website to educate young Jews, Jews ages to 35 about kind of the Israel you don't see on the news. Israel, that's why it's called Israel Beyond, because it's Israel beyond the headlines. And so throughout my work, I see other organizations that are involved in similar things, but a little bit more, shall I call it mainstream, or what we call Hasbara, or Israel advocacy. And so the issue that I have is that these organizations, I'm not going to name them because you guys probably know them. What they do is they've taken this, commemoration, and they've essentially co-opted it, or they kind of use it to direct the conversation about Israel into, we had the Holocaust, and then as a result of the Holocaust, we were able to get a state. The nations of the world felt bad for us. They got together in the UN and they gave us a country. Folks, I don't know if you know this, I don't have to tell you this maybe, or maybe I do, that in order for any group of people, any nation to declare a state, they must have in place for some years, for maybe 20, 30, or 40, even 50 years, an infrastructure. They need to have in place the people that are ready to come into to form a government. They need to have, cities, banking system, education system, all these things that are necessary to even think about declaring a state. Guys, so the problem I have is that when people are saying, we founded a state in the ashes of the Holocaust. Guys, just to give you a little bit of history, the Holocaust ended in 1945 when we pretty much liberated the camps, when the U.S. liberated the camps, Allied forces. The State of Israel officially was declared in 1948. There's two problems with saying that the State of Israel was founded as a result of the Holocaust in 1948. One problem, the first problem, is the fact that if you're saying that the Holocaust ended in 1945, why would it take any people who want to declare a state 3 years, especially the Jewish people who move like this, who move, if you've ever been to Israel, Israel moves lightning quick. Israelis, Jews, we don't wait. We're liberated today, tomorrow we're declaring a state. We're not waiting 3 years to declare a state. So, therefore, something must have happened, something must have been occurring, something must have been stopping us from declaring a state for 3 years, even longer than that. Folks, another problem I have is the fact that we had, again, just a little bit of history. There's a thing called the Balfour Declaration, which was written in 1917 by as a result of the League of Nations, by the colonial powers, by the British, which essentially gave a permission at some point, general permission, for the Jewish people to declare a state in what was then called Palestine, which is the name actually given by the Romans when they kicked us out, which they took from the Philistines. Nothing to do with Arabs at all. That's a whole other video, a whole other lesson. So they gave us permission to declare a state and for the Jews to come back to this land. Guys, first of all, no one just gives you permission to do anything in this world, especially not some big power at the time, like at the time Britain was, which ruled about half the world and pretty much all, their navy was what the American Navy is today. No one's going to give that to you unless you could create conditions on the ground and make facts on the ground for them to understand that this is what you want and that they should give it to you. So what does that mean? That means that Jews, it must have been, and it was so, that Jews, even before 1917 and even before the 1900s, the turn of the 20th century, put facts on the ground for this to be able to happen. Guys, the first Zionists, quote unquote, and this is something that they don't even say, they don't even write this in Israeli textbooks. The first Zionists were Hasidic Jews. These were Jews that came from places like Romania, from Hungary, from Poland, from Russia, from Lithuania. They came to what was essentially a swamp, and they built up places like we know today, Rishon LeZion, Rosh Pina. These are all places around Tel Aviv. They built up places. The first place they built up was Petah Tikva. They came were swamps, which Mark Twain describes as barren wasteland. He came in the 1870s. They came in the 1880s, maybe late 1870s, early 1880s, and they started working. They figured out. They took eucalyptus trees. They planted them, which essentially drains all the swamps. They kill all the bugs, and it made land fertile for some kind of growth. Then a little bit later, after that, a few Jews actually came to what we now know as the big metropolis of Tel Aviv, and they bought a plot of land, right by the beach. They had like an auction for it. There was literally nothing. I mean, folks, you have to understand something. There was nothing there. Everything you see today, Tel Aviv, nightlife, buildings, the Azrieli Tower, the stock market, beaches, everything, clubs, hotels, the Tayela, the promenade. There was nothing there, folks. It was literally like, I can't even describe it to you. It was literally like what Dubai was a few years ago before, real estate developers came and built up Dubai. And even now, it's like a sand dune with hotels on it. So you pretty much had Hasidim. You also had like some kind of, you had different waves of Aliyah, different waves of immigration. So I think by about the third wave, which was the early 1900s of immigration, these were the Jews that were escaping from Tsarist Russia, from all the pogroms and all the anti-Semitism of Tsarist Russia in the early 1900s. They came and they set up essentially what was to be Tel Aviv. They also set up colonies, they had German colony, American colony, different colonies and different neighborhoods of Jerusalem. You have Emek Rephaim, you have Kiryat Moshe. You have different neighborhoods even around, not in the old city, because the old city was cut off for Jews completely until the 1967 war. Parts of it were taken in 48 and then 67. So essentially before the declaration, the official declaration of the State of Israel, from 1880s onward until 1948, for about, let's say, 70 years, the Jewish people were busy building physically a country. Folks, so some of you know this history, some of you don't know this history. Even without this history, I'm going to tell you that for thousands of years since we were kicked out, every single big rabbi, if you go to a Torah lesson, anytime you hear a rabbi quoted, Ramban, which is Nachmanides, Rambam, which is Maimonides, the Gaon Vilna, or as it's translated to English, the genius of Vilnius, Lithuania. Either they came to Israel at some point, Ramban came to Israel, he came to the old city of Jerusalem in 1267 and built a synagogue when he had to flee from Spain. Other huge rabbis, the Baal Shem Tov came to Israel, or I think wanted to come. I think Rabbi Nachman stepped one foot in Israel, said it was too holy for him when he went back to Ukraine. Rabbi Nachman of Breslau. All the students of the Gaon of Vilna, all of the Hebron Yeshiva, which was actually attacked by Arabs in 1929, It was a this merciless attack by Arabs. It was a big tragedy. Those were all students of the Gaon of Vilna came to Hebron. Folks, we've been in these places like Hebron. We've been in these places like Judea and Samaria for years and years and years. We built up infrastructure there. We built up infrastructure in all these places. So the problem I have is when you have all of these supposed pro-Israel organizations that are supposed to be, giving Israel PR and educate Jews and non-Jews alike about Israel. All they talk about, the only thing they talk about is 1948. They talk about Herzl. Okay, they talk about the founder of the movement of Zionism, and then they skip Herzl, who was in the late 1800s, like 1890 something, and then they skip about 50 years of history. They go right to 48. They show you the video of David Ben-Gurion declaring the state. They show you, Jabotinsky. They show you Weizmann and everything, and then they start showing you 1967, how we were attacked, and all these things. It's almost as if there was some kind of like a black hole that the Jewish people or that the people that lived in Israel disappeared into before 1948. Nothing happened before that, and we suddenly, poof! The Holocaust happened, waited 3 years, 1948, boom, declared a state. Guys, before 1948, for about a 10-year span, you had people such as Menachem Begin, you had people such as Abraham Stern, and their cohorts. They came to what was then known as the British Mandate of Palestine. So you had people like Menachem Begin. They came to the land of Israel, and they pretty much did everything within their power to make sure that the British did not want to stay there anymore. All of these folks, all of these nation states that surround Israel, all of these quote-unquote enemies, first of all, they were carved up and created by the British and the French. And then when it came time, when Israel, when all these groups like Menachem Begin's Irgun and Abraham Stern's Lehi, the Stern group, were able to just harass, literally, I would use the word terrorize the British into leaving their land, into leaving the Jewish land. What did the British do? They went to places like Jordan or Transjordan, which is a kingdom that they carved up for a certain tribe, the Hashemite tribe of Arabs, and they started training Jordanian soldiers. They started training Iraqi soldiers. They started training different Egyptian soldiers, and pretty much, essentially, the British, while they left, they ended up training all of the enemies that Israel, once Israel declared a state in 1948, ended up attacking Israel. So guys, I just want to end off with, today's Yom Ha'atzmaut. We've officially, in the eyes of the UN, which, I don't know if you know this, they passed so many resolutions against Israel, we stopped counting at some point. According to the UN, it's been recognized since 1948. But guys, I just want to let you know, do not base, in your minds, do not base the existence of your country on the Holocaust, and do not think that your country was founded in 1948. It was not founded in 1948. All of these different, anti-Israel organizations are going to come to us and say, your country was only founded because the nations felt bad for you at the time. That you guys had 6 million you killed, and even if it wasn't even 6 million, it was a hoax, it was only 1 million. Guys, I don't know if you know this, there was a poll done in the United States, American Jewry. They asked Jews, American Jews, how do you identify as a Jew? What is the one thing that makes you identify, what's your Jewish identity, essentially? I think it was about 38% or 40% of them, which was the highest number. There were different answers given. The highest number of people said the Holocaust. Number 2 was humor. Seinfeld, Larry David, all this kind of stuff. Number 3 was like cuisine, bagels and lox. I think number 20 out of 2% of the people said it was Judaism, it was religion, any kind of spirituality. Guys, so this is, it's a bigger conversation in the nation of Israel and Klal Yisrael and Jewish people that, we're basing our Jewish identity on the Holocaust, we're basing the founding of our country on the Holocaust. Guys, I'm here to tell you, we need to stop it. We just need to stop it. There's a whole rich history of Israel, of the land of Israel, of the state of Israel, what came to be officially the state of Israel before 1948. Starting in modernity, it started in the 1880s. Before that, it was even in the 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, all the way dating back to medieval times, and even before that, dating back to the rabbis of the Talmud, the Amoraim and the Tanaim, the big rabbis of the Talmud, which was like year 700s and 600s, where they all traveled, back and forth from Babylon to Jerusalem. Some of them were in Jerusalem, had academies. Guys, just because when the Romans kicked us out, we still kept Torah academies in Yavne. We still kept, which was about an hour south of Tel Aviv on the coast, next to Ashdod. Guys, no one tells you this. Even these pro-Israel organizations. We founded the state in 1948. Guys, there's an organization, I'm not going to say its name, they made a poster today. Israel, 3,000 years old, 67 years young. Guys, this is to the organization. It's a very catchy slogan, but I have absolutely not the faintest idea of what that means. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? No, we are 3,000 years old. Period. That's it. There's nothing else to speak about. Jews were always there. We came there before the state was founded. We built up the infrastructure. We built up the schools. We drained the swamps. We built buildings. We put synagogues. We made some kind of a ragtag army. We had a chief rabbi. His name was Rav Kook. A chief. How do you have a chief rabbi of a place that doesn't exist? Well, maybe it did exist. Guys, today is Yom Ha'atzmaut. Yes, it's Independence Day. Let's have true independence. Let's become independent from our boxed-in thinking. We're not 67 years old. We are thousands of years old. That's the end of that. Thanks.